Good morning, Pelham Road. Happy Independence Day to you. I know, you're thinking, John, it's July the 2nd. It's not July the 4th. Look it up. Go ahead. Look up Declaration of Independence. Try to get this straight. Declaration of Independence. Look it up. It's coming back to you now, isn't it? Yeah, it was all signed on July the 2nd. The Lee resolution was approved unanimously. All 27, 28, 20, I think it's 27 grievances against the king were approved on July the 2nd. And John Adams wrote Abigail saying July the 2nd would be remembered in American history. Turned out they had a few other I's to dot and T's to cross, and so it was July the 4th before it actually got, and that's why we celebrate the 4th of July. But anyway, July the 2nd. Happy Independence Day. In the comment section below, why don't we test our understanding of American history a little bit? All right, I imagine you know that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and John Hancock, you remember that name, are on the Declaration of Independence. Why don't you put a name of somebody other than those three? All right? Somebody else who signed the Declaration of Independence. All right? And try not to duplicate other people's order. In other words, if somebody already writes something down, just Google Declaration of Independence signatures and add a new name. Okay? Well, everybody has them. Everybody uses them, but for the most part, we just take them for granted. I was gardening this year, and they got my attention. I've really never noticed my knees much until they started screaming at me one day. I was pulling some weeds out there, and it was time to get up, and I started to rise up, and they started hollering at me, and I just sat right back down. Knees are a fascinating part of human anatomy. They are the human shock absorber, and just like shock absorbers, they wear out and have to be replaced. Yet the brilliance of the knee is astounding. I mean, it's durable but flexible, it's strong but vulnerable. Knees are not, cosmetic additions to the human body. They are really important. Knees are functional. They make a real difference. The amazing bending knee allows us to sit, to garden, to play, run with our kids, our grandkids. When you learn to ski, what do they tell you to do? Bend your knees. When you play basketball, bend your knees. When you're playing in the infield in baseball, bend your knees. I mean, I can't remember a sport that I was told not to bend my knees. They allow us to run and have all manner of fun activities. I still play sports. In fact, I play a game and play with these guys, and some are a little bit younger than me, some are a little bit older than me. But one guy that I play with, when he arrives, his ritual to get ready takes 20 minutes. I mean, he's got to put this cream on his knee, some sort of anti-inflammatory cream. Then he's got to pull this sleeve up over his knee. Then he has to put this brace on his knee. And then he has to go and duplicate it for the other knee. It takes him 20 minutes to get ready to play because of his knees and how fragile they are. My left knee has a scar on it. I can remember to this day how I got it. It was at Six Flags Over Georgia. It was actually the KOA campground outside of Six Flags Over Georgia. It was raining. Bobby Bridewell and I were running through the parking lot trying to get back to the trailer, and I tripped and I fell and I skint my knee up something fierce. So much so that while it did heal up, I still have the scar from that. Now, I used to not think a moment before playing ball or gardening or doing anything. Now, I have to do a little thinking. Gardening once wasn't an adventure, but now it is a little bit of risky business. I could get on my knees and not be able to get back up. It's funny, isn't it, how our body actually brings us to our knees. Of course, as I have lamented, we want our knees to be strong. We want to be able to stand upright. We do. Yet maybe, if you think about it, the weakening of our knees, the creaking of our knees, are not an inconvenience. Maybe they're leading us to another place. Maybe the breaking down of our body is calling us to our knees Maybe we're not being thrown on our knees. Maybe we're being called to our knees. Now, there are some traditions where they kneel in prayer. Now, I know that the tradition that I come from, we typically stand and pray, or we possibly sit and pray, but in the Episcopal Church and the Catholic Church, kneeling in prayer is not uncommon. And so think of that kneeling, think of that kind of kneeling, the type of kneeling that you're in a posture of prayer. And how that may be that as the body begins to age, it begins to call us to our knees to pray. Think about that. I mean, I went to church with my father. He liked to arrive at church about 30 minutes before anybody else did, and he would go to the altar, and at the altar he would kneel and pray. Nobody there to see him. He wasn't doing it for anybody's show. I'd sit on the second pew, and I'd try not to squirm and make noise, and he would pray silently for 30 minutes. And as I got older, he'd invite me to come and pray with him, and I would go and pray with him. And I can't help but say that in my mind, I always thought to myself, he could pray at home. He could sit in a chair at home. He could sit in the pew here. Why does he insist on kneeling? You know, kneeling is an ancient practice, a way of honoring our God, a way of humbling ourselves before our God, and reminding ourselves of our humanity, and reminding of ourselves of our commitment to our God. So maybe as our body begins to break down and send us to our knees, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe being on our knees is a good thing. Maybe it's reminding us how much we need God, how much our humanity calls out for God, and maybe it's humbling to not be able to stand upright, but to have to kneel before the Almighty. Have a great Thursday.